universal free school meals, joining California, Maine, and Colorado. Elicited praise from progressives. Hell, this ain't no progressive issue. This is a human issue. This is about humanity, baby. Elicited praise from people who actually care about whether or not our babies get to eat. Tens of thousands of children are set to benefit from Minnesota's new law, which could be operational as early as summer school in July. Some of them were there to thank Walz at the signing ceremony, where the sense of elation was palpable. I'm feeling it. I know y'all can hear the smile in my voice. A report from Minnesota Public Radio highlighted the fact that an estimated 1 in 6 children in Minnesota don't get enough to eat on a regular basis, but 1 in 4 food insecure kids live in households that don't qualify for the federal free and reduced meal program, leading to mounting school lunch debt in the tens of thousands of dollars. Who ever heard of such a thing? Adrian?
Yeah, there should be no school lunch debt whatsoever. It should be something that is provided to students. It's just so incredibly, it's just heartwarming, and it is so basic and necessary. The fact that, it's like when people have GoFundMe's to fund their cancer treatment. It's one of those things we shouldn't be having to celebrate, but we are, by virtue of the fact that our nation doesn't take care of its people. And these little people out there who should be in a position where their stomachs are full so they can learn, so they can focus, so they're not afraid and wondering when their next meal is gonna come from. This is actually an investment in children and their education, their future, and for them to have futures. So I'm just as excited as you are. Well, maybe almost not, because you are, like, with good reason. I love it.
I know, we are giddy, and we talk about so much of it is bad news or has you pondering or keeps you up at night. It is really nice to talk about something that is so heartwarming as this. Disappointing it's only 4 states. Come on, states, y'all need to go ahead and follow Minnesota and California and Maine and Colorado and get this thing done. And here are some reactions from some of the top economists in the country. Let's start with Dr. Stephanie Kelton. Just simply her Twitter, beautiful. That's it. You sum it up in a word, absolutely beautiful. And then we're gonna go to one of our show's favorite, the one and only Dr. Robert Reich is in the house. Let this serve as a reminder that poverty is a policy choice in the richest country in the world. It is absolutely inexcusable that millions of our children go to school hungry because they are living in poverty. Kudos to Governor Tim Walz and the Minnesota State Legislature. This is beautiful indeed, and it does serve as a reminder that poverty is a policy choice. And it is certainly tragic that the how we're gonna pay for it crowd only gears up when the policy bends towards the workaday people of this nation. They never ask this question. Those latte liberals and those radical Republicans, they never ask that question when it comes to the military industrial complex. So I want you to see the comparison here. 4 states giving students free lunch regardless of their parents' income on one side, 4 states, or the bipartisanship that they are able to come together in the Congress to be able to support war. This headline right here, DOD announces additional security assistance for Ukraine. Today, the Department of Defense announces the authorization of a presidential drawdown of security assistance to meet Ukraine's critical security and defense needs. This authorization is the 34th drawdown of equipment from DOD inventories for Ukraine since August of 2021 and is valued at up to $350 million. Now, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Helping our allies during their time of need is exactly what we should be doing, no doubt about it. But why can't we prioritize what is needed here? Why can't we prioritize renewing the child tax credit? Prioritize living wages, prioritize protecting union rights, prioritize universal health care. And that's just to name a few. Go ahead and you can fill in the blank on what we should prioritize. We have got to deal with the domestic issues in this country. And you know who understood that? Even though the policy positions were imperfect with the New Deal, it was President FDR. He understood that the fight in World War II, that he had to come back strong, which is why he put forward the Economic Bill of Rights, which he was not able to see through before he passed away. But he understood that domestic issues were just as important. And Dr. Robert Reich, he definitely drops the mic right here on this. A society that rushes to bail out banks but doesn't provide universal health care to its people is politically and morally corrupt. Mic drop and amen to that. We need to get our priorities straight in this country, Adrian, but Doc said it all.
Yes, he did. Yep, that's exactly it. And as you noted before, we can shift the focus of what our nation's foundation was by acknowledging the past, the history, the future, and also paying attention to the knowledge and the things that we know will help improve all of our lives, without a doubt.
Yeah, without a doubt, we can do this, America. We can do this. We need to hold our elected officials accountable and stop falling for the okie doke. Don't smiling faces, baby. Just because they tell you cute, don't get all giddy about it. Say thank you and hold them accountable. That is our show for today. We'll see you again real soon. You know what I want you to do about this time? I definitely always want you to keep the faith no matter what is happening. And I want you to always marry that faith with the fight. Until next time.
Welcome, friends. Welcome, family. What's up, Pop? Welcome to a brand new week on the watch list, you guys. You know what? Whenever it's a brand new week of things, it would have to be the first day, at least work day of the week, which would tell us it's what day. It's the best damn effing day of the week. That's right. Of course, Jessica Burbank joins me for that best damn day of the week. The only person I can get to agree with me on these things. She's a TYT contributor and an analyst, and apparently a ranch owner.
The allegations of my ranch. I don't have a ranch. People are like, that's what someone would say.
Yeah, how's the sheep doing? How are the cows and the pigs?
Doing well. Everybody's doing great.
Make sure you take care of them on the 17 to 20 acres that you've got there. Appreciate you being here, Burbank. No, I don't have anything fun from her this week because I decided to let her go ahead and take a break this time from the ridicule that we bring her way every time. But there is tons of stories and news happening. You guys can probably imagine where many of these things go. It kind of has controlled the entire news cycle as we start the week. And honestly, you guys, and I would love to see what you're gonna say about this soon, Burbank, I'm not so confident in what everyone has been talking and barking about. Let's go ahead and start here.
So just compared to all the other legal investigations that the former president is facing, I mean, how does this stack up?
This one is probably the least threatening in terms of the jail time. It's also a little bit challenging because it's older. And Cohen, as a cooperating witness, could have some baggage. I mean, I don't think it's so much baggage that he wouldn't be effective as a witness. I think he will be. But it would have been low on the radar screen. The Georgia one is much more developed. And obviously, the January 6th and Mar-a-Lago classified documents cases are massive, sprawling investigations with very serious consequences.
Everybody in the political world is talking about the potential charges and arrest of Donald Trump. But CNN, he's a former federal prosecutor. Shan Wu appeared on CNN and he was pouring some cold water all over it. And I kind of agree. Let's find out why.
Most likely, they're going to start with this falsifying of business records for booking this as a legal retainer fee or something when it was really meant for Stormy Daniels and related to the campaign. That all by itself, just falsifying, is a misdemeanor under the New York laws. But if they can tie it to concealing another felony, either a New York State election law crime or perhaps trying to piggyback it onto the federal campaign violation, that bumps up the falsifying to a felony charge.
Just a simple misdemeanor, but it could be connected to things, then it bumps up. But there's so many different things that you could go after this guy for that we've seen so much evidence of, which actually is still being investigated. But that's not the only reason why I'm a little bit pessimistic on this entire thing. One of his attorneys, Trump's attorneys, also appeared on CNN and was asked a pretty damn direct question. Because as we know, the whole story about whether or not he's going to get arrested come Tuesday came from Donald Trump. This is what she had to say. Alina Habba was on CNN and it was asked directly. See if you can find an answer.
Yesterday, the former president's social media post. In one post, he said he expects to be arrested. Now, his spokesman then came out and said they haven't been informed of any arrest date. Our reporting suggests that is true. So why is your client going out and saying he's going to be arrested on Tuesday?
I think it's a very important thing that he does that, quite honestly. We've got Hunter Biden, who we've seen has ties to China. We've got his dead brother's, wife, who's now we've heard this week has been funneling money from China as well and is on payroll. So what happens is the Democrats now have to pull the wool over our heads, and you've seen memes, I'm sure, that say, okay, arrest Donald Trump. But that's exactly what this is. So my client is getting ahead of it, frankly, and he's smart to do so. I think that when you hear a lot of noise like this, we have to pull the curtains back and say, this is a problem for Democrats. They're losing in the polls. He's ahead. And we've got major crises happening. In New York, we've got people dying. This is what a state DA is doing after a failed federal DA couldn't do it. So I'm glad that he's doing it and getting ahead of it. Let's see if they arrest him.
She said, let's see if they arrest him. From, again, attorney for the guy who said, I will be arrested on Tuesday. Which one is it, bro? He said it, then it's maybe. Okay, Paula Reed, who was on CNN there interviewing her, tried one more time. Let's see if she got something out of her.
Well, he says in his Truth Social post, quote, former president of the United States of America will be arrested on Tuesday of next week. Protest, take our nation back. Is your client speculating about an arrest to incite political violence?
I don't think he's speculating at all. I think that's the reason you're covering it at the top of the hour, right? I mean, we're all hearing it, and we're all hearing leaks from the DA, which is very typical. So to not address something like that would be irresponsible. Somebody is leaking that he is getting arrested. We're hearing about meetings. We're hearing about people going into the grand jury with information. We actually heard a lie about somebody saying they went into the grand jury and they didn't. How can he not address it? He's a key political figure, if not the political figure. So I think it's not speculation. It's something that we're hearing, and I'm glad he's addressing it, because if it is true, he needs to get ahead of it.
We're not speculating about what's going on. We're just going off of what we made up and we're hearing now. There's leaks apparently coming from all over the place, says the folks who are then saying he will be arrested on Tuesday. Dara Faye, which I mentioned a lot of times on this show because I love her feed, she was reading my damn mind because she tweeted, since when do we trust anything Trump says? I can't help but to agree, especially when this is what he said. Before I let you in here, let's read what he wrote on Truth Social, Burbank. Really what we care about is the back end of this all caps rant that he went on. It's part 2 of a second page of his rant. He's complaining about the deep state and Biden and all that stuff. But let's get to the real back end, where he says the far and away leading Republican candidate, being himself, and former president of the United States of America, will be arrested on Tuesday of next week. Protest, take our nation back, which I think leads to even more to the kind of energy and vitriol he's pushing his foot soldiers to go towards. Tell me, I'm perfectly open and humble enough to be wrong about this, Burbank, but I don't see it happening tomorrow.
I have no idea what's going on in the Trump camp, but it seems their approach to public relations and media and putting out their message is the best defense is a good offense. They're saying, people are talking about me being arrested Tuesday because you said you were gonna be arrested Tuesday. That's why we're talking about it at the top of the hour on CNN. You said it. It's not, we're hearing a lot of stuff. You started it, and now you're hearing it from other people. So it's just completely backwards. He's admitted guilt to the Stormy Daniels situation. He said, this is extortion. They're trying to get hush money from me so she doesn't talk about it. And then he ends up giving her a sum of money. Like, he has admitted guilt already. And the attorneys are pretty clear that they think that's exactly what happened when he was talking about Stormy Daniels so much in interviews and in the press. So for someone who's admitted guilt for this so long ago, it does make it look weird politically, right? Because this isn't something that happened recently. They're getting an arrest on Donald Trump for it now. So supposedly, if he is arrested, it is gonna kind of seem weird politically when he hasn't been arrested for what's going on in Georgia. We know that we have the grand jury situation happening in Fulton County. There's a lot of other things that Trump should be prosecuted on, I think, first, before we get him on something like this, because it's gonna make it seem to people who aren't paying attention to politics closely that they're doing this to kind of silence him while he's trying to run again.
That's one of the whole ideas here, right? There's also the whole thing about ramping up his supporters as he goes to more events, because maybe he's concerned about that happening as the vote and support potentially gets split. There's evidence to that as well. But one more thing about when he truthed that out, but the New York Times pointed this glaring problem out with his declaration. 2 hours later, a spokesman issued a statement saying that Trump had not written his post with direct knowledge of the timing of any arrest. And he added, President Trump is rightfully highlighting his innocence in the weaponization of our injustice system. Makes a lot of sense. And as you saw the weaponization line, because there's folks headed by Jim Jordan and the Republicans in the House that have been pushing this weaponization of the government hearings, I think 2 times now. That's another part about this. To ramp up some more support, because he knows all he needs is a little bit of "here comes the government for your favorite president" type of lines to get his supporters back on board, hopefully. And also, as he also promoted the next few steps he's doing, the next couple rallies that he's pushing, it's a direct, hey, Pay attention to me. Now let me sell you some merch and a couple of tickets and maybe show up and listen to me rant with the same stump page I've been pushing for 6 years now. It's over and over and over again. But he did have this one last post, not last, of course not, but in tripling down on the whole thing. Let's look at this also from Truth Social. Again, in all caps. He's talking about how it's time. We're a nation in steep decline, being led into World War III. So there's violent rhetoric there. But on the back end, he says they're killing our nation as we sit back and watch. We must save America. Protest, protest, protest. The last time that he told his supporters to protest, we know what happened. They ran up on the Capitol. I'm sorry, it was Antifa and BLM that ran up on the Capitol. The same BLM and Antifa that Trump supporters are trying to get out of prison because they were wrongfully put in prison for being BLM or MAGA or who knows. Who gives a damn? This is the point. Confusion, activity, anger, and violence. Be ready for it because they're setting up barricades in New York right now and they're telling Ron DeSantis to make sure he doesn't, he interferes and makes sure that they can't get their president, their wonderful president, Trump. I mentioned Ron DeSantis. This is what he's been saying about these things. I can't wait. Let's go here.
I don't know what goes into paying hush money to a porn star to secure silence over some type of alleged affair. I can't speak to that. But what I can speak to is that if you have a prosecutor who is ignoring crimes happening every single day in his jurisdiction, and he chooses to go back many, many years ago to try to use something about porn star hush money payments, that's an example of pursuing a political agenda.
There's an old trick from politicians where they say you don't want to talk about the scandalous things that are happening with you because then they see you on camera just talking about it, and it's somewhat incriminating enough. So Ron DeSantis stepped forward here and is looking to defend Trump from this heinous accusation against him. But he kept mentioning, I don't know anything about a porn star. I don't know anything about payments, illegal payments. I don't know anything about that. You have to ask Trump about that. As you heard the giggling in the background, they saw where he was going. Those giggles understood what was happening. So did Steve Bannon and Mike Lindell, and they had a different thought about his tactic here. Let's go to that.
Governor DeSantis, you're better than this. That was a weasel approach, and don't throw in the thing about the porn star. I don't need to hear it from you, okay? Don't need to hear it, okay? Mike Lindell, the Election Crime Bureau report, sir.
Well, first of all, DeSantis is the Trojan horse we thought he was. I just want to put that out there, how disgusting he is. Remember, everybody, he met with Dominion lawyers on figuring out a way to make it easier to sue people for defamation like MyPillow and Mike Lindell. If they arrest our great President Donald Trump, hands down, he wins the 2024 election.
Hands down, hands down. But this Trojan horse, this Ron DeSantis is saying these sneaky things, trying to get into people's heads to understand what's really going on, or at least maybe poison the well a little bit. Donald Trump also noticed that, and this is what he had to say, and only the way someone like Trump would say it. Think about what we're talking about again. And this is his response. Ron DeSanctimonious will probably find out about false accusations and fake stories sometime in the future as he gets older, wiser, and better known when he's unfairly and illegally attacked by a woman. Even classmates that are underage, quote unquote, or possibly a man. Wow. I'm sure he'll want to fight these misfits just like I do. What I'm trying to get from that, or figure from this, Jessica, is Trump saying that DeSantis has underage boys, or he says man, that would probably be a boy if it's underage, or man, as he says, in his past? Or is Trump saying, I've had these issues, and then they're gonna come for you the same way they're coming for me? Either way, everyone looks pretty bad in this situation, though, that Trojan horse.
I don't know how much calculation goes into his Truth Social tweets, or if he just fires them away and then it's damage control from there. Some of this is calculated. Of course, DeSantis's speech was brilliantly done. I mean, in my opinion, it's really fun to watch these two go at it, but to be like, I don't know anything about a porn star getting hush money that Donald Trump has been accused of. But I do think it's unfair, and the prosecutor in New York maybe should pay attention to crimes in his own jurisdiction, not something from 2 years ago. It's like hilariously well done. And the way he repeats it himself as well. But then for Donald Trump to truth that out, I don't know. Like, is he saying maybe in the future, there could be a story that comes out about me, possibly with a man, and it's fake. And I'm just gonna tell you right now, it's fake. I'm putting it in parentheses because you haven't heard of it yet, but it might come out in the future. It's really interesting to watch these two play their little games.
This could be the second week, maybe not consecutively, but second week where Ron DeSantis could have potentially stepped in it. And many Republicans are like, hold on, what is this you're saying? It's gonna be, I guess, a word to the wise for Ron DeSantis. It's gonna be impossible to run against the guy and not ever say anything against him. I know they're trying to buy their time. And actually, I think these Republicans that are running for president are hoping that the Department of Justice, that whoever, Letitia James, that the Georgia investigation, and some of the January 6th investigations will eventually take hold and get this guy out of their lives because they don't have the guts to do it themselves. As a matter of fact, when talking about whether or not DeSantis will stand in the way of this potential indictment and arrest and all that stuff, he wasn't very committal on that either. Watch that.
I've got to spend my time on issues that actually matter to people. I can't spend my time worrying about things of that nature. So we're not going to be involved in it anyway. I'm fighting for Floridians and I'm fighting back against Biden. That's what I do every single day.
It's not gonna work. It's just not gonna work. No, you're not against Biden. You're the governor of Florida. You're not running for president, last I heard. You're definitely not in the general election. You still got to get by the primaries if he runs. But still, the narrative is I'm fighting against Biden. They're still afraid because they know how vicious their followers absolutely are. Last thoughts here. Is this a chance for? Actually, is he playing this right? Honestly, because if I was advising DeSantis, I know he's not in yet. But it's time to start throwing, not haymakers, just a couple of jabs, maybe a body blow.
Yeah, I think he's building a narrative right now. Oh, my work is so important. I'm actually getting things done. I'm not just whining on social media, right? He's establishing that contrast with Donald Trump that like in my day-to-day, I'm doing things that improve the country. Whether or not that's true, I'm just saying he's building a narrative there. But it is an interesting position where you have Trump slinging mud and DeSantis just passively aggressively insulting him, but making it seem like he's kind of on Trump's side still. It's really funny to watch it play out in that way. But Trump gets away with putting these clouds of doubt, right? Like maybe DeSantis has skeletons in the closet of these underage people. Trump also doesn't have to deliberately accuse DeSantis of the same things he's being accused of, but he's planting these seeds in people's brains where they're like, well, maybe. And so just the back and forth, I think, is only gonna get better. And DeSantis will eventually start to more clearly draw the line of contrast between those two.
They are definitely have their fingers crossed for tomorrow, Tuesday, hoping that this whole thing goes down. And even as quick as it could be him in and out and back to barking about it, they'd probably be okay, at least something on his record there. The president has never been indicted, not from my knowledge. I'm not sure about way back, but we'll see. I'm not a historian, you guys. They taught me that CRT, so I don't know real history. Let's go ahead and take this first break though, you guys. When we get back, Donald Trump needs support, of course, from establishment Republicans and other folks that always had his back. It's a bit of a mixed bag though, because there's some defense, but there's some low level, hey, but let's not do this type of energy coming from any of these folks. We're gonna do that. And also Mike Pence, of course, former vice president, has to do some answering to his role, or at least what was told his role should be as January 6th unfolded. There's more to that. We'll do all that when we come back. And your comments.
Welcome to the Happy Hour, everybody. After a week of soul-crushing news, we break out the good stuff. Good news, good videos, good people, and of course, drink good alcohol. That's the worst thing I've ever had.
This is the best show.
Full disclosure, we did do a shot right before the show began. It says,
let's
flamingo.
Flamingo.
The reason you had trouble with that word is it's not a word.
Okay.
This is the one of everything.
I've got a rash. Could I just put it on that to see if it'll take it off?
What did you used to think this was?
Bull.
Drink it, swallow it,
No.
spit it. Oh, that's needed after a day like this. Cheers to Brett Ehrlich. Climax. Uranus smells like farts. Because of course it does. This is the worst sketch ever of a perp. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? They found the guy. This is Sophie's super happy dog story of the week.
This dog is so precious and deserves the world. I'm just not drinking that beer.
Here's my dog. This is Onyx.
Yeah, I would just say that he's exotic because he's not your traditional dog. Still 12 out of 10, because they're all good.
Well, if that made you happy, just wait till you see the best thing ever of the week. There is a woman who moves like a horse.
Why do I want to go home and like try this?
We're actually going to show you the running butthole challenge right now. What's happening? No, that's just wrong. Every way. And we'll see you next time.
Hey, Dave. As you can probably see, Skype froze. Frozen crashed.
You know, I'm watching that documentary on the Vietnam War, and there was a TV journalist in the middle of some tiny little village in Vietnam doing live TV as the soldiers were burning the Vietnamese huts, and it didn't crash. And that was 1965, and he was in Vietnam.
My bad, Emily. Back on the watch list, you guys. I was about to say TYT. It's the flashback from a couple of years ago. Back on the watch list. Glad you guys are here. And matter of fact, let's see what you guys are talking about at that first block. TYT member Cecina Hugaboom says that is the bluest Mariner hat I ever did see. I'm surprised you could tell it was Mariners. Yes, Seattle there in the middle. Got it from one particular viewer. Sent me all kinds of stuff. It was fabulous. I appreciate you guys out there. Nostra Science says Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg has already bailed on one far-right Donald Trump indictment. You sure he's going to go after Donald Trump this time? Or is this just another right-wing corporatist dim, bait, and disappoint? Well, there's the thing though. Unless these leaks that only went to Donald Trump are true, they weren't necessarily saying they were going to do this. I mean, people always worry about that and speculate. Or I've seen headlines for the past year and a half talking about how Donald Trump was about to get arrested for something, and I just glossed right over. Cena Hogaboon again. Wow, well, there's another hat image of this. Get yourself one of these Seattle Steelheads. Don't you worry. Our same friend sent me the Steelheads hat that I have, of course, back at the crib on. Over on Twitch, you guys, Telly Panda says, it's the best day of the week, JR, 100%. That's just because it's true. Telly Panda, you're on fire. Daniela0120 says, I'm so glad you're in the afternoon. I can get to see you live. I would try to sneak and watch during meetings in the morning, and I'd always miss you. Love your show. Glad you never miss us anymore. Love seeing you guys here as well. Let's get some more things done here before we get to more comments. I love hearing from you guys, of course, but I also love hearing from people like this looking to try and defend, but not defend Trump.
Senator,
you turned your sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask one tiny little question to wrap this up, and that is, after he announced on Truth Social that he supposes he's going to be arrested tomorrow, Donald Trump said people should protest. Kevin McCarthy came out and said, don't protest. Where do you come down on this?
Well, in America, you're free to protest.
Yeah.
You're not really free if you can't express yourself, but do it peacefully. Don't be a knucklehead and riot. Yeah. I mean, do it peacefully.
Okay.
Yeah.
John Kennedy there talking about don't be a knucklehead, but you can still protest. You know, he started once he was asked, should you or should you not? Because he doesn't know which way to land, which way former President Trump will be responding to this. Kevin McCarthy had positions on this as well, still not all that clear. Let's see what he had to say.
When someone says that they can protest, he would probably be referring to my tweet, educate people about what's going on. He's not talking in a harmful way, and nobody should. Nobody should harm one another in this, and this is why you should really make law equal, because if that was the case, nothing would happen here, and that is what has to transpire. Yes, ma'am. Have I spoken to who? Well, it determines what you think that means in that. I think when you're referring to President Trump, I believe what he's probably referring to is make sure law is equal. He's not saying something negative in the stance, and nobody, let me be very clear, no matter what transpires, and this doesn't mean this is going to happen, but if was this to happen, we want calmness out there. Nobody per violence or harm to anything else. But what we're really saying here in this whole process is we need equal justice in America. And no one believes. Do you believe this is equal justice? Are you proud of what the Manhattan DA is doing? Do you think it's legally right? Well,
Kevin McCarthy was absolutely all over the place there. I wrote a few things down that he said. You're free to protest, but I'm going to educate you guys about protests. We go through this every time. So only one side of the aisle is free to protest. The other side, of course, is just violent. But then again, they said things like, he says, no one should do any harm. Kennedy there at the first top said, don't be a knucklehead and get violent. Also, McCarthy says, no matter what happens, whatever transpires at all, we want calmness. No one get violent and do any harm. There's a reason why these folks who support Donald Trump are saying explicitly before any violence may occur, don't get violent. Why would you tell a bunch of peaceful folks that you've never seen get violent the way that they like to portray them? Why would you have to tell them not to get violent? Why would that be the thing? Has anyone ever had to just tell a group that never gets violent to suddenly not get violent? It's really weird, but they'll let everyone continue to believe there's no violence anywhere in this group of people. Enter Marjorie Taylor Greene, who of course has Trump's back, but then still has to mince a couple words. Here's what she tweeted. We don't need to protest about the communists, Democrats, oh God, planning to arrest President Trump and the political weaponization of our government and election interference. These idiots are sealing their own fate in 24 because the silent majority has two feelings right now in talking about what's going on. So you don't want them to protest, but then maybe Donald Trump wants them to protest. Maybe he's calling for violence. She doesn't know where to land. Other Trump supporters are also talking about this bait. Again, try and think of where the bait is coming from. Here's another Trump supporter who said Trump should implore his supporters to not protest in New York, DC, or any other blank hole run by Democrats. How did this get to Democrats? This guy named Donald Trump told everyone to protest. Maybe it's him that you should be pushing back against. Another, if Trump gets indicted, stay away from protests. The feds want nothing more than to lure people into another J6. Don't fall for it. This accomplishes nothing. Well, how the hell are you going to lure some Trump guys into J6? J6 was done by BLM and Antifa. I'm going to keep saying it because they did. But there's still more from Ali Alexander, one of my favorites. Because someone asked him, are y'all really going to walk into another massive protest for Trump? And he says, I love Trump. Stop the Steal, his little group there, will not be physically protesting. We decline. We'll be focused on the 1,000 plus families still suffering post January 6th. Yo, I'm gonna say it for the 12th time. Apparently they're focusing on BLM and Antifa because I heard from them that BLM and Antifa were J6. It doesn't have to make any sense. Just like their supposed support for Donald Trump as he claims that he's just asking for protests when it's obvious he's asking for violence if they come for his ass.
Knuckleheads. I can't believe he said knuckleheads in that interview. And I love that it started off his little clip of Kennedy talking there. He said he's trying to argue. He's like cutting in. He's like, and then he's like, I'm sorry, go ahead. Which just goes to show he was like trying to get in and make a point. And maybe he forgot it. I really think that's what happened there at the start of his appearance. But let's think about what Trump is up against, right? Falsifying documents, tax fraud, extortion, inciting an insurrection, probably. So that's a lot. Many people in the United States are arrested for walking down the street and a cop asks you a question and they might not like your attitude. And so then they start to ask you, do you have any weapons on you? And then, you maybe get a little bit annoyed. You get a little bit upset. You're like, what is this all about? And they're like, hey, stop resisting. You need to comply with me and my questions. You end up getting arrested. You end up getting put in jail. So by these conservatives' logics, that is because this person has a high likelihood of being a threat to the deep state and becoming the president, because that's how the law is applied unequally in the United States. It is only used unfairly to prosecute people like Donald Trump. These folks begging for the law to be equal is the most cringe thing I've ever seen. When you live in a country where we have people bringing back Jim Crow in Mississippi, where we have the disproportional imprisonment and arrest of folks who are black in the United States. It's just disgusting to watch them be like, oh, well, we need to be more equal with the law. Why? Because you want Biden to be arrested because of his son's laptop that you hate so bad? Like, it just doesn't make sense.
This political party that also is saying things like, we don't want partisanship in our judicial system where you're targeting your political opponents. The same group that chants, lock her up, lock him up, lock they up. It's constant. It's whatever it is that they want to get to that end game is to let's weaponize our police against them. And now Jim Jordan pushing this weaponization of the government line, his committee there, they're trying to flip the script on reality. Consistently, it's how these things work. I'm so glad you brought the equal justice part, because then again, let's talk about what they're constantly mad about. These woke folks who keep talking about how our country from its beginnings and the way that we built our entire economy and our system based off of a hierarchy of humans. Some weren't even considered humans. Yes, I'm talking about enslaved folks. We don't want to talk about how we developed that from our injustices within our systems. Once slavery was over, then we went into different kinds of rules that separated folks and also gave people fewer opportunities. And those systems still stay in place. Yes, one of those systems is the police force within our country. All these things they don't want to have taught, because you have to be asleep instead of awake, is part of how they keep people on this same drumbeat of stupidity. So if we're gonna start figuring out what it is that's with the inequality of our justice system in America, you might have to look at the justice system in America. But if you want to have this quick snapshot and say the guy that I like, who's broken about 75 laws, is a rich old white guy, and that's why I support him, that's not any proof of injustice within the law. All the stuff that you refuse to learn about is actually it. Maybe you should get woke. Just saying. Let's go on to this next part about this, because I've got a bunch of folks that are responding to what may potentially happen on Tuesday with Donald Trump, according to Donald Trump, including Vice President Mike Pence, former. Let's go to him.
Indicting a former president of the United States at a time when there's a crime wave in New York City, that the fact that the Manhattan DA thinks that indicting President Trump is his top priority, I think, just tells you everything you need to know about the radical left in this country.
But he's calling on people to protest, to come out and protest, take our nation back. We know what happened the last time he said that.
Well, John, the American people have a constitutional right to peaceably assemble.
Absolutely, but to have a former president calling on people to protest a justice proceeding.
The frustration the American people feel about what they sense is a two-tier justice system in this country, I think is well-founded. That if they give voice to this, if this occurs on Tuesday, that they need to do so peacefully and in a lawful manner.
There's more to this than just the defense of Donald Trump. We've been through this already. We know Mike Pence will continue to do that, despite the fact that he was, at least supporters of Donald Trump and supposedly wanted his ass hung outside of the Capitol. Weird how that is. He mentioned the two-tiered justice system yet again. We'll get to that in a second. But let's see if he has any response to the reality of what Donald Trump thought about those chants to kill his ass. Yes, murder and hang. Watch.
I want to play you something Donald Trump said to me when I asked him if he was concerned about your safety on that day. Asked directly about, were you worried about him during that siege? Were you worried about his safety?
No, I thought he was well protected, and I had heard that he was in good shape. No, because I had heard he was in very good shape. But no.
You heard those chants. That was terrible. I mean, it was,
He could have. Well, the people were very angry.
They're saying, "Hang Mike Pence."
Because it's common sense, John. It's common sense.
I mean, he's effectively justifying or excusing the actions of people who were calling for you to be hanged.
There was no excuse for the violence that took place at the Capitol on January 6th, and I'll never diminish it as long as I live.
Mike Pence has this weird, fake, pensive nature to everything he says. I remember it was very frustrating to watch President Obama speak. It would take him 45 minutes to go through about 15 minutes worth of speaking because he was thinking too much about what he's gonna say next. And fine, that was just my frustration because I had to listen to it. But it's a small thing. Mike Pence has this fake version of that where he's like, well, John, Sometimes former presidents, nobody's listening anymore. We're tired, we're bored of that whole thing. But this has been the approach, to make it seem like he's really worried about something, when in reality, what he's thinking about is, how do I say this to keep my presidential hopes alive while not losing too many of these supporters that wanted to hang me? One more way he does that is to equate any kind of potential protest that may turn violent under Donald Trump to anything that was happening in the streets after cops murdered George Floyd. Let's see how he does that.
I believe that people understand that if they give voice to this, if this occurs on Tuesday, that they need to do so peacefully and in a lawful manner. That the violence that occurred on January 6th, the violence that occurred in cities throughout this country in the summer of 2020 was a disgrace. The American people won't tolerate it, and those that engage in that kind of violence should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
Okay, maybe it's time, Jessica, for us to start compiling which one of these current Republican candidates for president, Nikki Haley, I'm not sure if Mike Pence is officially announced yet. Which one of them is going in the best route here? Because right now they're all being the same, very much afraid, worried, and kind of trying to say something without saying much, even when it comes to his life. Odd.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear Trump's front running, right? That's what the polls show. And objectively, the most interesting one to watch, if you don't think about any of the potential consequences of another Trump presidency, and we just look at how entertaining it is to watch these folks run for president. But DeSantis, I think, is going to dig himself into a hole. I mean, what he said recently, but this past weekend or this past week at late in the week, where he talked about growing up in Tampa, Florida, but saying, although he grew up in the Tampa Bay area, I have working class roots because I have a working class culture of the family I grew up in. That's similar to, Ohio or Pennsylvania, because we went to church and we ate dinner around a table. It's like what you're talking about is not anything to do with working class culture. You're just talking about what you see on TV as working class culture is depicted there. No working class person would ever say that. I think DeSantis is going to dig himself into a hole. And then we have Pence and Nikki Haley, which I think are both in the camp of acting like these very serious, in middle of the road statespeople. And that's boring for most folks. And it's not a threat to the establishment. So then you have Trump, who's someone that is a threat to the establishment, but obviously a terrible person. So it's really scary when you have folks, all of them, still saying, crime is up. We've got to defeat the crime wave in New York. Crime has been down for the last 2 consecutive months, as reported by the New York governor's office and the NYPD. So they're just grasping at straws here. All of them are lying about things that are really important policy matters while trying to skew the narrative in a way that favors them for their own purposes. But they're running on very similar policy platforms.
And that's what they can't say, because that's a little too close to things we've already seen, and maybe some folks don't want to see any more of, but they figure we can do the Trump thing without being as blatantly crazy as Trump is. This is probably my favorite story of the day. We see Proud Boys and 3%ers and whoever else that's afraid of other folks that aren't like them show up at drag readings and brunches and all that, except they showed up in New York this time. Didn't pan out for them. Let's watch this.
I'm an EMT. I came here to help people. Not get the beat out of me. You keep trying to take my picture. I don't know what he's doing with it. Let's go. Yeah, get the out of here. Not welcome to New York. No. We don't like Proud Boys Walker.
Can you tell us what happened?
I need the police to pay my subway. Do you guys have an extra
You don't have the car, is what you're telling me.
No, my buddy has the ticket for the car.
And the car's in the lot?
Yes.
And where's the lot?
My validation won't work on the parking lot. These crazy rules in New York. The Proud Boys apparently had to retreat and run away because they went to harass more folks at yet another one of these drag story events. This time it was headed by Attorney General Letitia James, and New Yorkers were out. And as you heard, there was some colorful language, and they ran the hell out of there. But to just put an extra bit of humiliation on the pride of these Proud Boys. One of them also got arrested because they were messing with folks too. Watch.
Let's go. Back up. We're good. All right, let's get a video over here.
When your pride is based in covering your face with masks, that apparently I thought were dangerous to you, but then also coming and harassing folks for living their lives, you end up looking like that. How proud is he now? Is he going home like, yes, perfect day? Because there was one more of them that was apparently whisked away as he met his match from a couple of counter protesters. I guess he wasn't expecting anyone to do anything. Let's watch.
Step back, guys. I do want you to. I want you to. I want you to. Cameras on. 40 days, bro. 5 foot. He's looking up on me. Cameras on, guys. Cameras on. Hands on.
Burbank, you're from New York area. Is this surprising to you that this is the response that they got?
Not at all. Welcome to New York, baby. This is what I would expect. This is some good New York hospitality for anyone who's a white supremacist. It's so weird that the Proud Boys are like, you know, we hate big government, we hate the commies, but when they're in New York, you can hear the counter protester, you know, sort of nagging them about this. They expect an escort from the NYPD through the subway. So you want government armed forces to escort you through the city, but you're such a big, tough guy, but you can't be by yourself in the city of New York. I'm not surprised. These folks are not as tough as they say they are. They're clinging to this kind of old societal structure that's the only one they know, and that this is how they're spending their free time. It's just agitating people in the streets of New York City. I'm telling you, everybody they encountered that stopped or even went out of their way to say something to the Proud Boys had more important things to be doing with their time. But when you have folks who are white supremacists go into a city that's diverse like New York City, that's built on communities that are extremely diverse, communities that are there that have fought white supremacy. There's a lot of people in New York who have migrated fighting fascism, and that's how their families have roots in that city. So that's about what I would expect from New York. I think it's a beautiful welcome for the Proud Boys in the Big Apple.
What if they're going to pay attention to that welcome and understand that this thing, this bubble that you put yourself in of conservative media that told you that you're on the right side of history with this, that you should go harass people and you think you just walk away because they watched it happen in, I don't know, Tennessee, Alabama, Ohio, I don't know, and think they can get away with this. It's just not really going to work out. But what they will say now is, look how violent they are as they show up with guns, show up with weapons, and then they show up aggressive and start coming for folks. But then once it gets pushed back a little bit, just like any other bully story you've ever heard, they cower, they turn, and they run. Again, it's why they're carrying their guns, because they can't fight. But they want to start those fights. And after those fights start, they get to crying about the entire thing. I have one more question, though, because of the pundits that talk about drag shows, the politicians that are trying to form legislation against the LGBTQ plus community consistently as if they have nothing else that they could be focusing on. Are they gonna come forward and talk about how much they're proud of the Proud Boys? Because they incited the Proud Boys to do things like this. They've also incited other folks to run up in libraries and start threatening folks in drag that are reading or doing a performance at a club somewhere where adults hang out. They incite people to run up and start shooting these types of places up. So when you see this happen, are you proud of them? You keep pushing them to do it. Either you're against it or you're for it. Someone needs to ask them every time. If there was another one of these groups of Proud Boys showing up at an event and they got run off, do you think the people of New York were wrong for this? Because now you got to choose a side, because they like to incite. Then when it happens, they shut up real quick. This close to cursing. I'm curious what you guys were thinking. A TYT member O Jam Says, how's that old ass man walking around calling himself a proud boy? I was wondering the same thing. Without feeling deeply embarrassed. You're not a lost 22-year-old. Grow up. 100%. He never did. That's the problem. Something happened around, I shoot for more like 16 or 17 actually. Over on Twitch, guys, Adam Baum says, people are turning America into a dystopian landscape. Why is getting along the hardest thing? And systemically, that's how. Madness. Again, as long as everyone is desperate enough, no matter what political background you're from or ethnic, socioeconomic background, all these things, these white folks that are talking about how they're superior are in many of the same positions without healthcare, without good education, without a decent job. But that's what has them so mad. They've been focused towards other folks to be the source of their problem, and that's when they're getting violent. Toolman Tim 51 says, what would really piss off Trump is if DeSantis ran for president and got Pence for vice president. Let's not see if that ever happened. Let me go straight down to Pearl Line Cruz. Thank you for that. Appreciate your shout out there. That's about all there is. A happy person riding a rocket. That's fun stuff. Lastly, before we get into these last couple of stories, Gary Cooper, again, also on YouTube, says crime is up. Some compared to the Obama era, but crime is still at a historic low compared to previous generations. It is a really simple thing of looking up crime statistics might help us with that, but we just listen to whoever tells us. Next story then, because Rudy Giuliani found himself in front of some technology, and technology won.
All right, Mayor Rudy Giuliani, always amazing to see you. Love you. Sorry, I'm just so honored, always to interview you, sir. Mayor Giuliani, what would you do? What would you have done if this case was brought before you? You prosecuted a lot of cases before you became New York City mayor. You were a prosecutor. What would you have done if somebody said, "Here's the case, prosecute this"?
Well, here's what I would have done. I would have told them to go to hell. I had it happen.
It looks like we're having some audio issues there.
We go way back to 1980.
Somebody cut off Rudy before he gets deeper into this story from 1870. I'm not sure what year he was pushing for because his damn connection sucked. Now I understand. I don't have much of a leg to stand on here because we've had these issues previously, but Rudy Giuliani appears to have a track record when it comes to these types of things. But that was the beginning of a very in-depth interview, apparently, where he has, I guess, this to say.
And it's the usual downfall of a great republic when the prosecution system is turned into a political device. You can look at ancient history and you can see this is the kind of thing that ends a civilization.
It's a bad thing when a prosecution system turns into a political device. Again, and I said it earlier, from the party with tons of folks who surrounded former President Donald Trump and chanted, lock her up, lock him up. And any name that he tossed out there that he gave a stank face to, they went lock them up based off of his direct disdain for them. Sounds like political violence towards folks, or at least trying to get them in jail for their political views. But it's the end of a civilization. I have thoughts about the use of that term, though, but I don't want to step on you too much here, Burbank. What's your thoughts on old Rudy?
Yes, it's the end times. Well, here's what I think. When I think about Rudy, he can. I think Rudy Giuliani can go to hell. And okay, it's really funny what he did there. I love it.
Awesome.
I think the fact that this is happening on CNN, probably a primetime interview where they had a lot of viewers watching. Of course, I've only seen it afterwards when Jayar sends it to me, but it's just so good to see Rudy Giuliani act like this and talk about the end times and the justice system being used for political reasons. Newsflash, Rudy, it always has in the United States of America. There has never been a time where the justice system had any ounce of democracy throughout it in the United States. I mean, when we think about who is arrested by the police, when we think about how trials tend to happen, the justice system in the United States has never brought about justice. It's brought about punishment towards people who are inconvenient towards rich white folks that are running the system. And that's not really at all an exaggeration, even today, when you see folks who can't even afford to take the bus to get to their hearing after they were arrested for whatever reason, haven't even been convicted of a crime. But guess what? Now they have a criminal charge against them because they couldn't get to their court date for the crime of being poor. And then you have folks who can pay for a really pricey lawyer and get an appeal. I mean, the justice system is used to protect property and prosecute people who are not complying with the system by working for all of their waking hours so that they can afford the small bus fare to go to the courthouse to have this hearing, because maybe they were just walking down the street and the cop didn't like their attitude. I mean, these kinds of scenarios play out all the time. And for them to say that prosecuting Donald Trump would be the downfall of civilization, come on, man.
And then they list the 7 to 8 things that he's being investigated for, and then they think that sounds good. Well, it could be the phone calls that he gave trying to turn over the election. It could be his inciting of a riot. It could be his payments to a former porn star that he slept with, was trying to get hush money for. It could be so many different things. Who knows? They keep coming after him. Maybe he should stop doing it. You can't do the time, maybe don't do that crime. But one last thought, because they talk about civilization, and Steve King from Iowa, who's been ousted for being a super white supremacist, like to talk about the end of civilization all the time, but he was talking about it when it comes to what real civilization is, which is white Western culture he liked to talk about. That's the same thing. These buzzwords also get used by Rudy Giuliani here, because the only time that civilization ends is when old rich white folks are facing any level of consequences for the things that they've done. When it's anyone else, that's just good old normal American justice system. Weird how that works, isn't it? Let's get to this last story, because I like this one too, because this happens every damn year. Go. It's spring break in Miami, and as with every year, once the strip gets lit up in the middle of the night, folks go crazy, to the point where now, of course, they like to shut down the city, impose early curfews, stop the sale of alcohol around 2 o'clock in the morning. But they've been drinking since 11 a.m. I think you've already got yourself in some trouble. Which, by the way, what happens around 11 a.m.? They hit the beach, and apparently this is fun too. Watch. Just messy, bro. I'm embracing my old mannish behavior here, because my first thought is, that's somebody's child out there looking like that, running into each other on the beach, ass all out. But it's a fun ass time. But one other part about this, though, because Fox News is going to be bringing this up as they do every year. In many cases, it's, can you believe what these kids are doing? And then they show ass and go, hey, can you believe that they have thongs on their butts? And as we show it constantly, that's what happens at spring break. But I feel like it wasn't this crazy and insane before. Maybe it's because colleges are too woke. Let's try it. Who knows? Go.
They might be doing could be laced with fentanyl. Yeah. So, I mean, he makes everything worse.
Yeah,
and
that was the point that I really wanted to talk about.
Now it's so woke. You know, I wonder if these kids partly they're letting loose because on campuses they're so strict, right? You can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this without getting in trouble and reported and held to such stringent standards. So it's almost as if for them the gloves come off socially on spring break, even though those boxing gloves come on for the fights on the beach.
Really odd, though. Suddenly, the students at these woke universities, Jessica, are the victims of all this wokeness. But every other moment for the rest of the year, these students are being indoctrinated into wokeness because they actually don't want to be there. Are they woke or are they not woke? Are they tired of the stringent rules on campus, or are they just trying to live?
I always criticize the right for not being capable of nuance, but actually, they're not capable of comprehending opposites, just the concept of things being the opposite. So for a campus to be very strict, there are strict rules because it's woke, and so then they while out on spring break. That doesn't make sense because I thought campuses being woke means the kids are so wild, they're doing drag, they're doing this and that. We got to reel it in. So which is it? Are the campuses too wild or are they too strict? They've kind of conflated freedom and I don't know, conservatism, freedom and locking the kids down, taking away their ability to do fun stuff. It doesn't make any sense what they're saying here, and I think that's because they don't have a coherent argument. They don't know what they're talking about.
Did you ever do Miami on spring break? Cabo?
I did not.
None of them.
No. I wasn't a wild college person. We partied a lot in high school, though.
No, the spring break thing is, I don't know. It's always been this way, by the way. I don't know why they are acting like this is brand new. Happened from my old ass. I just never did it because it didn't even look fun then. I'm just still thinking about, so you show up back at your hotel room bleeding, you're like, this is a great time. I just never understood it. So maybe I've been old since 18 to 22 because this is where we are now. So yes, I guess I'll add to the, calm down, you guys. Just calm down.
Don't be a knucklehead.
Yeah, have a Mike's Hard and then take a couple hours off because apparently you can't. Mike's Hard Lemonade, those are wonderful. Okay, we're done, you guys. Thank you, Jessica, for being on the show. Appreciate you on another best damn day of the week on a Monday. Thank you. We'll see you next time. Appreciate you guys for being with me as well. Up next is the Young Turks. Go check and hang out with them. We'll see you guys tomorrow.